Ken Stevens stood in his own driveway, laptop bag in hand, listening to music thump through the walls of his house. Heavy bass, loud enough that the neighbors would complain if this kept up. He checked his watch, barely 20 minutes since he'd left for the airport. He'd made it halfway there when he realized he'd forgotten his laptop with the presentation files he needed for tomorrow's investor meeting. The meeting that could secure $15 million in funding for his cybersecurity software company. 3 years of work came down to that presentation. So he turned around. Quick trip. Grabbed the laptop. Back on the road. Except now music was blasting from his bedroom at 11 in the morning on a Wednesday, and his wife Nina's car was the only one in the driveway. Ken unlocked the front door quietly, stepped inside. The music was definitely coming from upstairs. Their bedroom. He moved to the stairs, each step deliberate, his mind already cataloging the wrongness of this situation. The bedroom door was closed. Locked, he discovered when he tried the handle. Then he heard it. Nina's voice, breathless. God, yes. A man's laugh. Deep, familiar somehow. Does he suspect anything? Nina's laugh in response. Ken? Please. He's clueless. Completely wrapped up in his little tech company. He hasn't noticed anything for months. Ken stood frozen in his own hallway, hands still on the doorknob. 3 years of marriage. He'd trusted her completely. Apparently, that had been a mistake. But then the man spoke again, and Ken's blood turned to ice. Good. Once we have him sign the life insurance increase, and the updated will next week, we'll stage the accident. Make it look like suicide. You get everything. I get you in control of his company. That software is worth $50 million easy once we cut the right deals. The voice clicked into place. Young Harrington, Ken's business partner, his college roommate, the man who'd been best man at his wedding. Nina's response was cheerful, casual. A week feels like forever. I'm so tired of pretending. Just a little longer, baby. Then Ken Stevens becomes a tragic story, and we get everything he built. Ken backed away from the door, his mind racing. Not just an affair. Murder. Premeditated. Planned. And they were using his own trust against him. He walked downstairs silently, grabbed his laptop from his home office, and left the house as quietly as he'd entered. Got in his car. Drove away. But he didn't go to the airport. Ken checked into a hotel near the airport and called his assistant. Personal emergency. Reschedule the investor meeting for next week. Same time, same place. Is everything okay? It will be. He hung up and sat on the hotel bed, his mind working through what he'd just learned. Ken had always been analytical. It was what made him good at cybersecurity, finding vulnerabilities, predicting attacks, building defenses. Now he turned that analytical mind on his own life, looking for the patterns he'd missed. Nina had suggested the life insurance increase 2 months ago. We're building something real with the company, she'd said. What if something happens to you? I should be protected. He'd agreed, touched by her concern. The paperwork was sitting on his desk at home, and signed. She'd also suggested he update his will. Make sure everything is clear, she'd said. Especially the company shares. You wouldn't want it tied up in probate if anything happened. Again, he'd agreed. The updated will transferred his 60% stake in the company to Nina, who would then have controlling interest with Young's 40%. Young had been pushing for Ken to take a much-needed vacation after the investor meeting. You've been grinding for 3 years, man. Take Nina somewhere nice. Decompress. Young had even suggested a specific resort in Costa Rica. Remote. Lots of hiking trails. Easy place for an accident to happen. Ken pulled out his phone and started making notes. Every conversation, every suggestion, every odd moment from the past few months. The picture that emerged was meticulous planning. They'd been setting this up for a while. He needed proof. He needed to know everything. And then he needed to destroy them both in a way that felt poetic. Ken Stevens had built a cybersecurity company from nothing. He knew how to find hidden threats, expose vulnerabilities, and neutralize attacks. Young and Nina had made a critical error. They'd assumed he was clueless. He wasn't. He'd just been trusting. That ended today. Ken spent the afternoon setting up surveillance. His own house, ironically, had a security system he'd designed. Cameras, audio, the works. But Nina knew about those, so she'd been careful. What she didn't know was that Ken had a secondary system. A backup he'd installed himself after a break-in scare last year. Hidden cameras in every room. Encrypted feeds to a private server. He'd never checked them. Never felt the need. Now, sitting in his hotel room with his laptop, He accessed the feeds, scrolled back through the past 3 months of archived footage. What he found was worse than he'd imagined. Young had been coming to the house every time Ken left for work. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes for half the day. The affair had been going on for at least 4 months, maybe longer. But more damning were the conversations. Ken watched as they discussed the murder plan in detail. Young talking about a contact who could stage accidents that wouldn't raise suspicion. Nina researching Ken's daily routines, his routes, his habits. They discussed drugging him first, just enough to make him seem depressed, erratic. Setting up a narrative of a man under pressure who couldn't handle stress. "We'll make it look like he jumped," Young said in one video, 3 weeks ago. "Everyone knows he's been stressed about the investor meeting. We plant some evidence of depression, make sure people notice he's been off lately. Then after Costa Rica, after the accident, it all makes sense." Nina had laughed. "God, I can't wait to stop pretending I care about his boring tech stuff." Ken saved everything. Every video, every audio file. Encrypted copies to 3 different secure locations. Then he started building his counterplan. Young Harrington had always been charismatic. It was why Ken had brought him on as a partner. Young could charm investors, close deals, make connections. But he'd always been lazy about details. He let Ken handle the technical work, the actual building. Young just wanted the rewards. Ken had noticed small things over the past year. Money that didn't quite add up. Meetings Young took alone that seemed suspicious. At the time, Ken had chalked it up to different business styles. Now he wondered if Young had been setting up side deals, planning to cash in once Ken was dead. Ken accessed the company's financial records. As CEO and majority owner, he had full access. What he found confirmed his suspicions. Young had been having unauthorized meetings with their competitors, sharing proprietary information, it looked like, in exchange for promises of board positions once their software launched. Young was planning to steal the company even if the murder plan somehow failed. Ken smiled grimly. These idiots had no idea who they were dealing with. He made a call to Leo Weeks, a former FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm. Ken had done security consulting for Leo's company last year. "Leo, I need everything you can find on Young Harrington. Financial records, communications, associates. Everything. And I need it quietly." "How quiet?" "Ghost quiet. He can't know I'm looking." "This official or personal?" "Personal. But it might become very official very soon." Leo was quiet for a moment. "How bad?" "Murder conspiracy bad. I'll have preliminary findings in 24 hours. Full workup in 48. Ken's next call was to his lawyer, Alfred Huffman. "Alfred, I need you to draft documents that transfer my company shares into a trust. Complex structure, multiple fail-safes. If anything happens to me, anything at all, the shares get sold to our biggest competitor, not transferred to Nina or anyone else." "Ken, what's going on?" "Insurance. I'll explain later. Can you have it ready tomorrow? I'll push everything else aside." Ken's third call was to his accountant, Don Moon. "Don, I need you to audit our company accounts. Specifically, I need to know if Young has been moving money around without authorization. That's a serious accusation. I have serious concerns. Can you do it?" "I'll start tonight." Ken hung up and opened his laptop. Time for the fun part. Young thought he was clever, but he'd left digital footprints everywhere. Ken spent the next 4 hours tracing them. Young had been communicating with someone named A. Ritter through encrypted messaging apps. Not encrypted enough, though. Ken broke through in under an hour. Child's play for someone with his skills. The messages were explicit. Hey, Ritter was the contact who would stage the accident. A professional, hired to make murder look natural. Ken traced the payments. Young had been funneling money from the company to pay this guy. $15,000 so far, with another $35,000 promised after the job was done. Ken saved everything, sent copies to Leo, and then did something risky. He sent a message to A. Ritter from Young's account. "Change of plans. Need to meet in person. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Warehouse District. Come alone." The response came 10 minutes later. Confirmed. Ken smiled. Time to introduce a few complications into Young and Nina's perfect plan. The next morning, Ken called Nina. Kept his voice normal, cheerful. "Hey, honey. I'm sorry about rushing out yesterday. The investor meeting got rescheduled. Pressure's off for a few days. I was thinking maybe we could have dinner tonight. Reconnect." Nina's voice was warm, loving. The act was perfect. "That sounds wonderful. I've missed you." "I've missed you too. See you at 7. I'll cook your favorite. Ken hung up and fought the urge to throw his phone across the room. She was so good at pretending, so effortlessly dishonest. He wondered how long she'd been planning this, if she'd ever loved him, or if it had all been a long con from the start. It didn't matter now. What mattered was making sure they paid. At 2:30 p.m., Ken arrived at the warehouse district, parked out of sight, and set up surveillance equipment. At 2:55, a man arrived in a black sedan. Tall, military bearing, cold eyes. This was A. Ritter. At 3:15, when Young hadn't shown, Ritter pulled out his phone. Ken watched as confusion crossed the man's face. Then anger. Ritter called Young. Ken had intercepted the call, rerouted it to a voice modulator loaded with Young's speech patterns. He'd recorded hours of Young's voice from the hidden cameras. "Where are you?" Ritter demanded. Ken's modulated voice, sounding exactly like Young. "Can't make it. Wife emergency. But I'm having second thoughts about this whole thing. The risk is too high. We have a contract. I'll pay you to walk away. 20,000. Cash. Consider it a kill fee for a job that's not happening." Ritter's voice went cold. "That's not how this works. You back out now, you become a liability." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. I know your face. I know your plan. You think I'm just going to walk away and hope you don't talk?" Ken smiled. "Perfect." He was recording every word. "Look," Ken said in Young's voice, "I'll pay you 50,000 to forget we ever met. That's more than the job was worth." "You have 48 hours, Ritter said. 50,000 in cash, or I go to the police with everything. And trust me, I documented all of our conversations as insurance." He hung up. Ken saved the recording, sent copies to multiple secure locations. Then he sent a text to Young's phone from a burner. "We need to talk. Problems with our arrangement." Young would be panicking right now, wondering what the hell was going on. Good. Dinner with Nina was surreal. She'd made lasagna, his favorite, and set the table with candles. She looked beautiful, smiled at all the right times, asked about his work with genuine seeming interest. "How did the investor meeting go?" she asked. "Got postponed. Scheduling conflict on their end. But it's happening next week for sure." "That's great, honey. You've worked so hard for this." Ken sipped his wine, watching her perform. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the life insurance and the will. You're right. I should get those signed. Just in case." Nina's eyes lit up, just for a second, before she controlled her expression. "Only if you're comfortable. I don't want to pressure you." "No, it makes sense. I'll sign them this weekend." "Perfect." She reached across the table, squeezed his hand. "I love you, Ken." "I love you too," he lied smoothly. After dinner, they watched a movie. Nina cuddled against him on the couch, playing the role of devoted wife. Ken's phone buzzed multiple times. Young calling, texting, panicking about the message from Ritter. Ken ignored it all. At 10 p.m., Nina yawned. "I'm exhausted. Coming to bed. Soon. I want to finish this email for work." She kissed him goodnight, disappeared upstairs. Ken waited 30 minutes, then checked the hidden camera feeds on his phone. Nina was in bed, texting furiously with Young. "Nina, he said he'll sign everything this weekend." "Young, forget that. We have a bigger problem. Ritter is threatening to go to the police. Says I tried to back out." "Nina, what? Why would you do that?" "Young, I didn't. Someone's fucking with us." "Nina, you're paranoid." "Young, I'm telling you something's wrong. We need to move up the timeline." "Nina, how?" "Young, tomorrow night. I'll come over after Ken goes to work. We'll make it look like a home invasion gone wrong. Ritter can't expose what hasn't happened yet, and we'll deal with him after." Ken's blood went cold again, but this time with fury rather than fear. They were going to kill him tomorrow, in his own home. He screenshotted everything, saved it, sent it to his encrypted servers. Then he made a call. "Leo, I need police contacts. Detectives who handle homicide conspiracy. I need them ready to move tomorrow. Talk to me." Ken explained everything. The affair, the murder plot, the hired killer, the financial fraud. He sent over the video files, the audio recordings, the financial documents. Leo was quiet for a long moment. "This is... Jesus, Ken. This is attempted murder. How are you so calm?" "Because being angry won't help. Being smart will. Can you have detectives ready? I'll call in some favors." "But Ken, they'll want to wire you, set up a sting." "This is major." "That's fine. As long as we do it right. I want them both in prison for a very long time." "They will be. I promise you that." The next morning, Ken went to work as usual. Young was already there, looking stressed and haggard. He pulled Ken aside. Hey man, can we talk? Sure. What's up? Young glanced around, lowered his voice. I've been thinking, maybe we should sell the company. Cash out now, take the money, move on. This stress is killing us both. Ken studied his former friend. Where's this coming from? Just thinking about priorities. Life's too short, you know. This was Young's play. Get Ken to sell, split the money, and then kill him for Nina's share. Neat and tidy. I appreciate the thought, Ken said, but I'm not interested in selling. This company is my legacy. I'm in it for the long haul. Young's expression flickered, frustration, anger, quickly hidden. Right? Of course. Just a thought. Ken went to his office, closed the door, and checked his phone. Leo had sent confirmation. Detectives were briefed, surveillance teams were in place, and they were ready to move tonight. The trap was set. At 5 p.m., Ken left work, drove home, and parked in the driveway. Inside the house, Leo's team had installed additional hidden cameras and audio equipment. Police were stationed in unmarked vehicles around the block. Ken walked inside, went through his normal routine. Dinner, work, emails, TV. At 9 p.m., he went upstairs, got ready for bed. Nina was already there, reading a book, playing her role perfectly. Good night, honey, she said sweetly. Night. Ken lay in bed, fully clothed under the covers, waiting. At 11 p.m., he heard it, the back door opening. Quiet footsteps on the stairs. Young Harrington appeared in the bedroom doorway, wearing gloves, holding a wrench. Nina sat up, smiled at him. About time. Young crossed to the bed, raised the wrench. Sorry, Ken. Nothing personal. Just business. Ken rolled out of bed, holding his phone, the camera recording. Actually, Young, it's extremely personal. Young froze. Nina's face went white. See, the thing about being a cybersecurity expert, Ken said calmly, is that I'm really good at surveillance. I know about the affair. I know about the murder plot. I know about a Ritter. I know about you stealing from the company. I know everything. You're bluffing, Young said, but his voice shook. Am I? Ken tapped his phone. Police, I'm ready. The bedroom door burst open. Detectives poured in, weapons drawn. Drop the wrench. Hands up. Now. Young dropped the wrench, raised his hands. Nina started crying, screaming that this was a misunderstanding. Detective Kenneth Goodman stepped forward, reading them their rights. Young Harrington, Nina Stevens, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, and fraud. Ken stood watching as they were handcuffed, led away. Nina looked back at him, her perfect mask finally shattered, replaced by genuine fear. Ken, please. I'm sorry. We can work this out. No, he said quietly. We really can't. 2 months later, Ken sat in a coffee shop reading the news. Young and Nina had both taken plea deals rather than face trial. Young got 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and embezzlement. Nina got 18 for conspiracy and accessory charges. Ritter had been arrested separately, charged with being a hired killer. He'd flipped on Young to reduce his own sentence, providing even more evidence of the murder plot. Ken's company had thrived. The investor meeting had gone perfectly. Turned out, surviving a murder plot made for compelling press. They'd secured $20 million in funding instead of 15. Ken had bought out Young's shares for pennies on the dollar through the courts. His phone buzzed. A text from Leo. Drinks tonight? You're buying, since you're now disgustingly rich. Ken smiled. Deal. 7 p.m. See you there. Ken closed his laptop and walked out into the sunshine. He'd lost a wife and a business partner, but he'd gained something more valuable, the knowledge that he was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than he'd ever imagined. Young and Nina had tried to destroy him. Instead, they destroyed themselves. And Ken Stevens was just getting started.